accredited artist and business coach, and you're listening to Terry Talks, where we discuss all things taboo, uncovering art industry nonsense, grounding you in confidence and leadership to run an arts business with unwavering power and grit. Hello, what's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Terry Talks. Today, we are going to talk all things art collectors. And in my last episode, I went over some of the things that I learned from a previous workshop, listening to an actual art collector talk about her passion for collecting art and what it means to her to collect art from people of her same culture. So today we actually have someone who's incredibly knowledgeable, has, I would say, the insider information on the nuances of, the collector's attitude, mindset, all of those things. So this guest today, who I know is going to really help us crack the code. I hate to say that, but it's, cracking the code a little bit just to get you closer, and you as in artists and freelancers who are selling their artwork, into the mindset of the artist. As always, thank you for listening. Thank you for engaging in all my shenanigans on Instagram, all of my thoughtfully written emails. Today, I got some really great feedback on my subjects, on my email subjects. And I was talking about how I've been fucking around a little bit with ChatGPT. It's become my best friend. I feel like she is teaching me a lot about different things. So I'll put in one of my shitty subjects, and it'll spit out something totally in my personality, which is kind of incredible. So if you aren't in those places, I recently just did an exclusive email sale that was only for subscribers. It was literally $10 for my next office hours. So that is definitely the place to be. In the comments, there are links to everything. And of course, I will be talking to you on Instagram shortly. So let's jump right in. I'm going to invite Rockafeller. She is the founder of Less Than Half, a movement-driven membership platform dedicated to helping culturally engaged women find meaning in art by teaching them how to collect, support, and invest in other women artists as matrons of the arts. I love that. She has spoken about the importance of supporting women artists at various well-known events such as Art Basel. So we want to invite her on this podcast to help us really pull apart the nuances of the delicate balance in inviting collectors into our space, right? And getting close to understanding what that looks like. And we're going to talk a lot about that and have a lot of questions for her. I talk a lot about the fact that you do not magically just meet a collector and all of a sudden you sell out your entire collection. You don't get a collector from Target. You don't, you can just buy a collector in a store. It's not a thing. And it's a cultivation and a relationship. And she's going to talk a lot more about that in depth. Hello, Hall.
Hello. Hi, thanks for having me.
Tell us what you do and dive more into Less Than Half, and we'll start by talking also about the different kinds of collectors in your community. I know it's membership based, so let's get into it.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's a membership community dedicated to teaching women how to navigate the art world in order to become matrons of the arts, which means women who are dedicated to collecting, investing in, and supporting the work of women artists. Of course, the word matron is, the sort of female version of the word patron, which we use fairly neutrally to refer to anybody who's dedicated to supporting the arts. But clearly that has a lot of implications. So
Yes.
Our group is called the Matrons of the Arts. And yes, I mean, it's a membership group. So we have various tiers, and we encourage people to join at any juncture of their art collecting life. So we actually have a lot of new collectors, people who are intimidated by the art market, want to learn how it works, and not to sort of gender stereotype, but I think women do like to do their homework. They do like to be prepared when they go into situations, and the art world is just almost unique in its desire to put up barriers and keep people out of the market. So our goal is to make sure that those barriers come down as much as possible, and that women feel confident when it comes to walking into an art gallery and asking a price. So there are people who haven't done that, or the first time they do it is under our sort of not quite supervision, but under our guidance, all the way to people who are already collecting, but realize at some point that the works on their walls are not by women, and they have only a handful of works by women artists. And then of course there are the people who already are doing this. They are already matrons of the arts. They're already dedicated to the subject, but they don't and they want to be part of Less Than Half because the art world is full of a lot of people who are not dedicated to that, and they want to find their people. It really runs the gamut, and I think that is a testament to how little there is support for this kind of work in the art world, and also how universally applicable it is. It's no one demographic that is interested in elevating the creativity of women.
I think that when we first spoke, and I reached out for everybody, I reached out to Hall on Instagram, of course. But when we first spoke, that the tiers and how you described them was by
Mm-hmm.
far the most interesting
Right.
aspect. I've never, of course, I always tell my clients, don't assume what's in anyone's pockets, right? Like you
Mm-hmm.
never, it only takes one person. People walk all over the place. And of course, I'm in New York. And so it's like, you could have someone walking in their pajamas, but you don't know what they have in their
Yeah.
wallets, right? So we're selling to everybody to a certain extent, right? Everybody within our sort of niche and aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that the want to learn and to become a member is really interesting, that like somebody who's never really collected before probably assumes that collecting is expensive
Mm-hmm.
at all times. Like that's the
Absolutely.
barrier that I'm hearing you talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course, if we wanted to bring more stereotypes into it, is let me ask my husband.
Mm-hmm. That is the thing I hear a lot.
So that's just like the juicy stereotype that, yeah,
Yeah.
let me come back to it and let me ask my husband. And of course, I want my clients to seal the deal. Like I
Mm-hmm.
want them to walk away with a definitive, boom, I want
Right.
this.
Right.
Um, so I'm sure, you're familiar with that sort of like role play.
Yeah.
Um, so tell me about, let's start with your top tier, the people
Mm-hmm.
who've been collecting, forever and love the sort of the hobby, I want to say,
Mm-hmm.
like collecting. I would say I'm like a mid-tier,
Mm-hmm.
collector. I'm very conscious. I also I'm one of those research people, but I can also be like a very, what's it called, like direct buyer. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'll see something at an art fair who's an emerging artist and I'm like, I want that.
Mm-hmm.
I know where
Yeah.
it goes, right? But not everyone is as, what would you call me? I'm a decisive shopper.
Right. Right. Right.
That's what I am.
Yeah.
I don't have disposable cash, but I am a decisive shopper.
Right.
And I would say I would categorize myself as a collector from, I have probably two female artists that I keep an
Mm-hmm.
eye on.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so tell me like what your ladies talk about and like how they make decisions, I guess, into the
Right.
psychological point.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when it comes to that, I mean, of course, there are collectors that exist out there who are only buying, the top of the market, the things that Larry Gagosian is saying are the right things to
Investments.
buy. And there are always going to be the people who don't really pay attention to the wider art world and just rely on their art advisor's advice about what's going to
Mm,
go up and, any number of things. And those people are, they're certainly calling themselves art collectors, but I think that a true art collector, meaning like a person who believes that art is an essential piece of their lives and they couldn't live without
yeah.
exposure to it and living with it. Like a true collector, you will find in their house, yes, maybe if they are in that, tax bracket, a blue
Calibrate.
chip, yeah, a blue chip piece by an artist who's had retrospectives around the globe. But if they're a true collector, you're also going to find that funny little thing that they picked up on some
Right.
vacation, or the something they bought on the street, or something that just called
Haiti.
to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a painting my dad got on the street from Haiti. That's an
Right.
oil painting. It's a little cracked at this point, but it goes up
Right.
with another American emerging female artist. I mean,
Exactly. Right, right. So a real, I think that kind of collecting doesn't have a mind for the sort of secondary information. What gallery is this person represented by? What, how much does it cost? That sort of thing. So I would say that, of course, an emerging artist collector demographic is probably going to be a demographic that's really is looking at maybe a $3,000 to $5,000 kind of tier, but that doesn't mean you're not going to get, you know, the creme de la creme, the art news top 100, 200 collectors,
Right.
because those people are truly, they understand what art is about. They understand its sort of place in their psyche. And yeah, and I think also I would say I think at all levels, but certainly people who have already bought their first several pieces, it's like, it's a bug. It's a disease. It's a
It
good
is.
disease, but it's a disease.
Absolutely. I mean, I definitely find most of my work that I've purchased actually at the other art fair, which is by far my most favorite
Mm-hmm.
event for emerging artists. I hate the percentage that they take, but from the artists, but
Mm-hmm.
I do love their curation of people.
Mm-hmm.
And something that I also wanted to just mention about the types of collectors, right? The ones that, will go straight for the investment and the name.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I babysit in a house that has a Rauschenberg on one side,
Mm-hmm.
an old drawing, which I didn't even know until a year later of being in the same house. And on the other side of the wall, there are these different storyboards
Mm.
because the person I work for is a writer.
Right.
And then in the bathroom, there is a work from Hawaii.
Right.
So, and their parents are collectors. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's art everywhere. But it's really, I mean, I wouldn't have, had I not looked and been like an art aficionado,
Right.
I would not have known. And I'm sure many people who walk into their apartment have no idea who Rauschenberg is and how
Mm-hmm.
important his
Mm-hmm.
earlier works could be. This is like a charcoal
Very,
mishmash. You know what I
very
mean?
cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And, that's happened to me twice. I was in another place visiting somebody and I saw a tiny little Van Gogh.
Oh, whoa.
And I was like, oh, they got it. They must have found this at an auction or something. This was in Switzerland
Mm-hmm.
and, very wealthy, but it's like, it was almost like a norm, like the norm.
Mm.
It,
Mm-hmm.
it was with lots of other things.
Right.
So I can see now, like, as you're describing the sort of different levels, even, in your membership, but also like, okay, a collector could be someone, to some extent, someone who hires someone to
Mm-hmm.
scout new
Right.
artists been
Right.
coming. And, that's a different, like
Right.
that's a caliber of like, they're just more investing. I hear that,
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I mean, advisors, of course, are, they're, there's no sort of one job description for an art
Right.
advisor, and they can,
Right.
some of them will have 10 artists that they're constantly trying to sell, and some
Yeah,
will really be constantly on the lookout for exactly the right thing for their clients. So, of course, I wouldn't discount art advisors
of course.
by
Yeah.
having relationships with art advisors, and yeah, keeping them as part of the ecosystem. But certainly, I think an emerging artist, I think the lower your price point, the less likely that our art advisor is going to,
Recommend.
be involved. I mean, you have to think about the incentives, right? That you probably get a 10% commission.
I was just gonna say that split goes down and
Exactly.
oh, yeah,
So,
it goes down and down and down.
right. So you do want, an art advisor is going to probably
What
rather
a
sell a piece
nice.
that's, $50,000 rather than 5,000.
Yeah.
So I think that probably for your audience of probably mostly emerging artists, it's the focus on having relationships with collectors themselves is not only where that's the relationship, those are the decision makers, is going to be directly the collectors, but also it's just I think if you can grow with a collector, or a collector can grow with you, that kind of relationship is really meaningful. And I think that that's what a lot of my sort of newer members are sort of excited about. The people who are newer to collecting are excited about.
What work are they doing to start their collector's journey? So if I were to give an artist, I want to give my clients the upper hand in
Hmm.
something. right?
Right.
What's the best way for them to then approach and meet in the middle, right? Of course, events, but like I'm trying to figure out some tangible ways that they can do some of the legwork, I
Right.
guess.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that it's a delicate dance because no one really wants to be like pitched or like solicited or exactly. I think that that is, I wouldn't say like DM people with a PDF of your work. I don't think it is works as sort of directly as that. But I will say, if we're trying to get into the mindset of a new collector and a person who is not terribly well versed in or not terribly comfortable with the art world, and even thinking back to myself and the early days of I you know have a background in art history, so I was much more academically inclined towards the art world and didn't understand the art market because who does? I mean, I think most people who are in it don't understand its entirety. So if I think back to then, what were the sort of early works that I bought? I would buy, something on, a limited edition print run, which was attractive in its price point, and also it's sort of, that makes sense. The print makes
It's
sense.
tangible, easy.
Tangible, it's easy, it's
I
yeah.
can choose my framing. I can kind of like, it's like a low risk type
Right,
of,
exactly. It's not a huge painting. It
right.
can sort of then I was the pandemic. So there were a lot of artist auctions.
Yeah.
So an auction, that's, if you're an artist, it's a little tough. Donating to those is great because, gets your work out there, but the sort of tax implications are, you really can only write off the materials.
Right.
So it's not, if it does sell for $10,000, it's bid up to $10,000. You can't write $10,000 off your taxes, which is a weird thing that shouldn't be the case, but there we go. Um, and then finally, story sales, like Instagram story sales.
I like how
Yeah,
good you can get.
and I think that those three things, um, the consistent thing there is that it actually wasn't, I didn't have to interact with the artist. And I know that doesn't sound terribly, you know, of course, art is about humanity and you do want to have a relationship with the artist, and knowing the artist is ultimately important. But when it comes to buying, I think that there's a little bit of a psychological fear that you have to prove yourself in some way. So if there's a way for someone just to DM you, I saw that you were selling this piece for $700 on your story. I want to buy it.
Yeah.
That you've just reduced the barrier to entry so much, so that that person can feel comfortable and they understand what that is. They understand the price because you've put it there. They understand how to, purchase the thing because they get Instagram, they get DMs, and they understand that it's available, it's for sale, it's being offered. So I've bought a lot of things through Instagram stories, either people, cleaning out their studios, like, oh,
Yeah.
studio sale, like these are all my drawings, or like,
Great entry point.
yeah.
It's a great entry point. I also talk a lot about the buyer psychology, people not wanting to be
Mhm.
bothered.
Yeah,
So if I'm walking around a store. There are times when
totally.
I want the VIP experience. I don't give a
Right,
shit if it's Target. I
right,
want help when I want help. Other
exactly,
times I want to browse in peace and I want no one looking over my shoulder.
exactly.
And I think that an interesting point that you raised is that like, starting off with those kind of like the least intimidating exchange, but I mean
Hmm.
with social media, like I could learn about someone in 2 seconds on whether I like their vibe or not.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
can watch them on stories or watch their habits on stories for literally 5 seconds and get a vibe on whether I
Hmm.
want to support their business or not.
Yeah.
Because what I often will say is yes, it's a transaction. There is money involved, but at the same time, they're going to remember how that transaction went down.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to look at that piece of artwork if it was a
Right.
shitty transaction or if you sent me a print on printer paper and I
Right.
spent 150, which has actually happened to me. When I was
Yeah.
first purchasing art, I got a 6x9 from an artist I had been following on Instagram for a while. She has a huge following and she was doing some really tiny prints.
Mm-hmm.
And I literally, it was like not even in an envelope with like a piece of cardboard in it.
Right.
I ordered from Etsy. It was on like magazine. I could not believe it
Yeah.
was on
That
magazine. It
does seem,
was horrible.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, of
And I
course,
remember it today. That was maybe
right.
10 years ago.
Right, of course you do. I think that that is, yeah, I mean, there's always a horror story. I found that the artists that I've bought work from off of Instagram really
Yeah.
have been very professional in their, sending of the work and packaging of it and everything. I just think that what could be more professional, and this is actually more of a um concern to protect the artist,
Yeah,
is just a little bit more formality to the transaction.
I agree.
Invoices, if there's, I mean, it is a bit of a risk. Sell something to somebody who's just contacted you from the ether. And
Always.
always, so trying to create a little bit of an agreement, or and I think, I don't know, I guess I there's a lot of trust involved. There's a lot of trust
For
involved.
sure. For
But
sure.
I do think that the majority of people are not scammers, and
I've
when
definitely
they
seen
are,
it escalate. I've seen the professionalism on Instagram and on social media since it's now so just that's like the way now, you know
hmm
what I mean? It's a quick exchange,
hmm
there's some people who are still doing it Zelle. There's some, I mean, it's easy
hmm
to track certain payments, you know what I mean? Like it's just so incredibly quick
hmm
that I have felt like the level of professionalism has kind of gone up a notch every
hmm
year, which I like.
hmm
Its own store. But
right,
also, I also have clients who want people going directly to their website now. They're like, fuck
right,
this. Like this is just all getting scattered all over the place. My
right,
website's there for a reason. It's top notch. The transaction
hmm
goes through seamlessly on the bottom of my invoice. It's like a no bullshit, no refunds, whatever, whatever.
right, right.
Um, but I think that in terms of if you're cultivating that relationship with a collector, to me, that's VIP. Every single transaction to me would be a VIP process.
hmm hmm
So I want to ask you for one sort of last piece of advice.
hmm
Right. So what is like, there are one or two things you would say to an emerging artist who kind of just like feels like shit, like they feel like they must be represented by a gallery
hmm
to get those people who are ride or dies, or
hmm
they see all these ads for, from studio to sell out, like these kind of
right,
geeky programs that I'm,
hmm
I everyone knows that I'm just like the most upfront person. I cannot handle terrible business ethics when it comes to
hmm
artists because we're so vulnerable.
hmm
And that my whole like mission is to protect artists and give them the upper hand to
right,
navigate the business side. But the desperation is can be very heavy.
hmm
And I want someone to just buy 5 works from me in a row. They're a collector then.
right.
So how do we change this story or this narrative about not getting collectors, but how do we be in that space? Like
hmm
how would I start to be in that space?
Right. Well, I
No, that's
was
a it's such
no,
a
I was going to answer this question with what I said before, so I should have thought about that. Just about being so hard to sort of just be out there and sort of cross your fingers that your message is being received in some way. I would say in some ways, just by being an artist, you already have some sort of, it does seem like the collectors have all the power because they are the ones purchasing something. But there's a lot there's a lot in the artist's hands that is very powerful. I think there's a reason that, sort of luxury brands will partner with artists or will
Right.
feature artist studio visits with for their VIP clients. So there's a mystique and an inaccessibility about the life of an artist that is just invisible to even people at the sort of highest levels of wealth, certainly, and power as well. And I think that remind yourself often that being an artist is sort of culturally a very mysterious but also intriguing position to have. And I won't say use that in sort of a nefarious way, but remind yourself that you do also have power,
Yeah.
um,
Yes.
and that your life and your experience is of interest to others, and sharing sharing process, sharing materials, sharing your thinking, sharing your life experience for what contributed to the work that you made, I think is you take for granted because you live in it all the time, and you take for granted because all your friends are artists, but truly people are starved for especially like tactile experiences
Yes.
and meaningful interactions with human beings and with humanity. I mean, we're inundated with a lot of meaningless stuff that is just has such a slick surface,
Yeah.
the 3-second engagement with a video or um
And then how
oh,
well it does and what is
exactly.
and
Yeah, and we can't live like this. I mean, our spirits aren't nourished by this, and our spirits are nourished by art. So the more sort of humanity you can imbue into your art and the way you talk about it and that sort of thing, I think the more people will respond, because in some cases they don't even know that they're starved for these
yeah.
things.
Yes. And
Um,
I literally said that on a phone call. I'm like, people half the time, I was talking to a client and I was like, go in. She just moved to Atlanta. Go into like 4 cafes within a 4 block radius and
mhm,
see if they have white wall space. They oftentimes are working on their businesses. They don't even realize that there's white wall
exactly.
space to cover.
Right,
I
right.
mean, opportunities are literally sitting in front of us,
Mhm,
as an artist and business coach.
mhm.
All I do is empower artists to look at what we have. We're
Right.
covering those walls. Like,
Right, exactly,
you know,
exactly. And right, don't wait for an opportunity. See the opportunity.
right.
Um,
This year, my goal was to make sure I get to more in-person events. I want to
mhm,
meet artists who don't even know I fucking exist.
mhm, mhm,
And I want to help them, be louder. And
mhm.
everyone, that does mean showing your face
Right,
on Instagram.
right,
Yes, you have to be human. We need to know your blood is pumping. I don't buy the bullshit is if you don't show your face that, and just your static images that will help you sell. I don't
right.
believe that at all. There's nothing like talking to me.
Mhm,
I talk to my friends. That's how I see it on Instagram. I'm talking to my friends all day. And
mhm.
that's the only way that I've built, part of my business on Instagram. I've met some really fucking incredible people like you.
Totally. Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I do the same thing. And I will say, it's not my initial inclination as a more sort of bookish or introverted person. So if I can do it, you can do it, I think is my message there. I much prefer to be reading a book at home in the evenings, but it is an essential piece of the job. Everyone is a full person is I think the art world is so based on trust, and
Yeah.
trust is about understanding who a person is fully, a three-dimensional understanding of a person. And at some point in our human history, there were ways to communicate that in person, and
Holograms and
yeah, exactly. And that doesn't, it just so happens that in the 21st century, it's creating yourself as a full person online. And so the more sort of data points that you can put into your online picture to prove that you are a somebody, I think when this is your goal, when your
yeah,
goal is to sell work, the better. And you can recognize it yourself when you're going online to do anything, to buy a piece of art or to buy a pair of shoes. You're constantly filtering for those data points that are sort of verifying.
how
Yeah,
does the shoe look on the person? And it's like,
right.
what if there were no, like, commercials didn't exist? I talk about that. I'm like, how did, like, someone eating pizza, I'm like, "That looks amazing."
Right, exactly. Like, it's just you need to evoke these
Yeah.
things in people. And, in a cynical way, it's like, oh, well, it's all marketing and, what's this?
Oh,
But no, but it's like your art is the substance. Your art is the building block of culture, and you need to get
I
it
wanna
out
see
there.
where the art ends up, you know? I always tell my
Mm,
clients, like,
mhm.
see if they'll send you a picture of, like, how they
Yeah,
hung it. See
yeah.
if, like, where it lives now, you
Mhm.
know? Like, it's so great. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
shedding light on this mysterious life that we've all chosen. um, and hopefully I'll have you back. We'll have you back for some updates on how this idea, this market of collectors evolves over time,
Mhm.
and fluctuates, and how prices fluctuate. I mean, I'm constantly going into, the higher end galleries to look at prices and
Mhm.
see, like, what movement happens over time in the economy, in the
Right.
art economy, I guess. But for everyone listening, thank you so much. We appreciate you, and feel free to DM us on your thoughts. You can find Hall on Instagram, on our
Mhm.
website, Less Than Half, but I'll also be linking everything below, and stay tuned for the next episode. Thank you, Hall, and I will talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Bye.
Thanks for listening to another unfiltered episode of Terry Talks. I've also got some free resources on my website that'll help make your life a lot easier as an artist in business. You can also check out my services or apply to work together. Before you go, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and sign up for my newsletter for more art industry information.